So you're going to go to bed now after this?
Hello and welcome to Australia versus Ireland post-match reaction brought to you by DrivingMaul. Hi, I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul, and you might have just heard Ashwin there asking if I was going to go to bed after this, but hey. Welcome Ashwin, thank you for joining me.
Yes, hello. I'm still awake. I rub the eyes.
Yes, I will be going to bed, and then because I need to get up early to watch the Argentina versus Wales game, and then I'll be watching the South Africa-England game on record. So this one finished 18-9 to Australia, and this was a impressive defensive display, Ashwin.
Absolutely. It was just basically Australia's defence that was what the game was about, and they just didn't give Ireland any space, really. It's hard to say much more, really, because all that Ireland basically looked like everything was fine. You know, the passing was working, the phase work was working, but they weren't actually getting anywhere. They weren't making any. They didn't really. There's a couple of times, obviously, they got some momentum, but with the amount of position that they had, the amount of tackling that Australia was doing, they weren't going anywhere. They maintained ball, but it was basically going side to side, and they didn't seem to change their attack when they didn't by going side to side. Wasn't working. Didn't change the game plan.
Yeah, no, there was a lot of keeping it tight, short balls, and I thought at the beginning of that second half we started to see them make some breaks, and I thought, maybe this is going to stop tiring the Australian team down. But no, 154 tackles, 90% efficiency. That is an impressive shift by Australia, and now we know why Cheika went with the 6-2 bench. So,
yep.
So it's quite clear why he went with 6 forwards and 2 backs, because he knew Ireland were going to keep it tight. They were going to try and run over them, and the forwards were going to have to put through a big shift. And I don't normally do this, but let's just quickly having a quick look at the defensive stats. I mean, you've got Corey Betty out in the wing with 11 tackles, Foley with 10, CO 10, Coleman 14, Pocock 12, Hooper 18. Team 12. So those are all the guys that made it into double figures, which is 7 of them, whereas just 2 of them, just Jack Ryan and CJ Stander for Ireland with 16 and 12. So yeah, a big shifts.
But the thing there is, I think that really, I mean, there was in the first half, there was a couple of times Ireland sort of like, you know, they had one move in particular where they got 3 dummy runners, and they got the ball to the outside, wing made it down the wing. Can't remember how that actually ended, but they did that, it worked. They didn't do it enough, and most of the time it was just basically, as you say, either shoveling it off to the one-off runner, or then basically just shoveling along the back line, and it was pretty much easy pickings for the wingers, so the Australian back line or the defensive line to just come up and shut that down. And just wait for the ball to get out to the wing, and obviously Koroibete to nail the tackle and kill the movement.
Yep, and that's and that's kind of how it went. I mean, the early on we had a bit of a kicking duel. I thought we'd see a bit more of that, but even though actually looking at it, it says 33 kicks from hand by Australia and 29 by Ireland. That's quite a lot of kicks. I think a lot of that was in the first half, though. In the second half, it kind of it tapered off. And they try to keep ball in hand and go through the phases a lot more. So first off, it was mainly sort of swapping penalties to get points because both sides were defending well. And one of the things that I discussed with Herman on Thursday night was that I was surprised to see Corey Betty with the 14 number on his back, i.e. being the right wing, and yet we saw him make 2 breaks in that first half down the left wing. With Haylett Betty on that side, so actually we're overloading that side with both their wingers at times, which is kind of interesting how they were pulling their players around.
I think it's to tell you the truth, I think it's becoming more of a common feature across many teams is the fact so that you don't want your winger just to sit out on his wing for starters. You do want him to get involved in play. But the other thing is to actually utilise them. You've made the break. There's nothing going to be, on the opposite wing. There's no point for your winger to be actually sitting over the other side. So to utilise them so if he's a right winger over on the left hand side. The other thing is that I think might have been Jack that actually made the comment in one of the chat rooms over one of our shows. And I absolutely agreed. It was the fact is that, they're professional players. They effectively should be able to play on either wing. Obviously they're going to be better on one than the other, but the reality is that you should be able to step off both feet. You should be able to carry a ball under either arm.
Sure, but you generally have your defensive. The All Blacks always will have if your Ben Smith, your Dag, your Corey Jane, your Milner Scudder. They're always a right winger because they always have the more defensive, fullbacky, catching wing on the right, and then Eureka Awani, Julian Surveyor is your left winger, who is much more your attacking one. And that's so it's just it was just interesting seeing them switch it around the other way round. But that's where they got their try from in the first half. That first break, Stockdale got across, lovely tackle, put it into touch. The second time they did it, they stayed in field and got over the line.
Yeah, Ruck 5 metres or a couple of metres out from the line, and Guinea just pops it up to Foley, who good sort of not intuition, but sort of eyes in the back of the head type scenario, knowing that you've got Foley on the outside, and just to pop the ball up, and he just basically dives over the line, nice and simple. But as you alluded to, they worked that wing very well tonight. Surprised that it worked so well for them that they didn't go there more often.
Yeah, I think it worked for them when they had sucked all the forwards across right to the other wing. It didn't. They couldn't do it from midfield. They had to do it from right the other side. So it's only certain situations where they could do it. As much as I'm going to complain about the commentators in this game who were absolutely dire. One of the good points I made was pointing out was that Australia were going for long passes to try and find space, whereas Ireland were trying for the short passes to try and create space off the shoulder. A very different style of play from these two sides. This wasn't definitely contrasting styles of attack, and so they needed that. They needed to have a lot of width to make those long passes tell.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing that Australia struggled with was obviously, and one thing that the Australian commentators did get right, was the fact that the Irish defence was coming up and in and cutting off that the channel on the inside. So the ball had to be accurate and going wide. And the initial accuracy from the Australians in particular, probably up to 60 minutes, wasn't there to get it to the outsides smoothly and quickly enough to actually, for their strong wingers, which they have got strong wingers, to take advantage of the space that was actually outside and there.
Yep, totally. Second half, we saw Ireland go through the phases, rack up a lot of, make the Australians make a lot of tackles. I thought they'd be tiring them out, but it didn't work. First penalty was missed. Eventually, they got a penalty on 54 minutes. They got through. I think they said they got through. Got more than 10 times. They got over 7 phases during a play, and they still couldn't really break down this Australian defence. They got through 19 phases at one point and couldn't break them down. Impressive effort there.
We talk about how great their ball retention was, but unfortunately, ball retention doesn't win you a game.
No, it doesn't. And then they seem to get tired, and they were bringing off. Sexton, Furlong, and they're bringing off British and Irish Lions off the bench. And I'm thinking, okay, this is where they push on. Now, those two players have been playing for Leinster. They've gone at the end of their season. They won the European Champions Cup, which means they played every single game in that one. They won the Pro 14, which means again they played all the finals. They played as many games as possible, or Leinster had as many games as possibly they could have. They never got knocked out. So it's at the end of the long season. These guys clearly are tired. Because they didn't create that bench impact that I was expecting.
I'd agree with you. There were some touches that you could see from the Carn-Healey's, the Sextons, but not the big impact that we were expecting when you see those names coming off the bench. in saying that, to be fair, towards them, the rest of the team was basically not achieving much out there. I mean, you look at their backline and you look at someone like a Bundyaki that you hear so much about and really was basically ineffectual out there versus a Curtly Beale who was looking, he created half chances all over the show. Weren't able to convert them, but he was creating.
He was, and he wasn't just creating by passes or things. He also was bumping off some players and showing some decent strength as well, which I was impressed by.
Marpy type strength, you might say.
You might say. That's not quite. No. You might say it. I wouldn't. Bundyaki got through 19 carries. I mean, he had more carries than anyone else in this game. With Jack Ryan with 18, the next guy. So Bundyaki got through a lot of work, but it didn't really go very far or do much.
Don't go anywhere. No. He was basically going into a brick wall and not achieving much. And, really when as I said, look, if you were doing a video for training sessions on what to do, the Irish performance was fantastic because you could just see what you wanted to do. But at the end of the day, in terms of a game, as I said, you had 19 phases in one stage. They just went nowhere. And with that amount of possession, those amount of phases, they really need to get across the line to score, and didn't look like doing it, really. I mean, after that 10-15 minutes, second half, I was like, oh, here we go. They'll eventually, as you said, wear down the defence, they'll get tired, but no, it didn't happen. And possibly that's due to what you said right back at the beginning, the 6-2 split on the bench.
Yeah, and then after about 60 minutes, as you say, they started to get a bit of territory and possession. Got themselves a scrum penalty, which got them up, and then finally an interesting choice of going for a tap and go penalty on the 5 metre line. Similar to, I had this similar conversation with Ryan in the last game of Aaron Smith taking a slow tap and go penalty. We had another one here. Normally you'd go for a scrum in that situation or kick to the corner, but they didn't. I was surprised.
Well, they've just won a scrum penalty to get them in the lead, and they get another penalty basically, obviously close to the touchline, but 5 metres out effectively. And you'd say, 60% chance that they'll go for a scrum, sort of 40% chance to have a line out, 0% chance of a tap, but they took the 0%.
and they got over eventually, to be fair to them.
They got over.
Their line out, they lost 3 line outs, and losing their first line out, I think, shook them quite a bit, and they didn't trust their line out all game. So I wasn't surprised. But the scrum was solid, so I'd have thought they'd have gone for the scrum and try to have a backs move off the back of the scrum with lots of space. You've got your Curtly Beale, you've got Folau, you've got great wingers. Yeah. There's so much you could do, but they chose not to, which surprised me.
They scored anyway.
Look,
the interesting thing for me is the fact is that really Australia weren't in that match until sort of like the 60th minute mark, even the 65th minute mark. Tupou comes on and makes a difference for that team. He obviously, they seem to give him the pat on the backs for that scrum, although it's the other side that seemed to wheel around. So I don't know. I'm not a front row forward. You're the hooker. But he makes an impact when he comes on that field, and it was and for such a young player. He's still only 21, maybe 22. He's got a long future in that yellow jersey, canary yellow.
He has, but he's got a good name, hasn't he? A nickname anyway. So we had a number of disallowed tries in this one. Curtly Beale was called back for a tackle off the ball, which is perhaps a little bit harsh, but
technically correct.
Technically correct. And the referee, not referees, the commentator. If you're watching the Irish commentators, well done. You had a much better game than I did, because the Australian commentators at that point had a total heart attack about how bad the referee was, and then decided to continue about that, and then and suggest around the neck roll, clear out, tip, whatever you want to call it, saying that was then a clear yellow card, in which the referee goes, "No, it's not. I'm just going to give a penalty." Which point they're like, "Oh, I just totally give up on this game." Well, I wish you would, and I wish you'd stop commentating too, and just go away and do something else. Because they just don't know the rules or the laws. Sorry, and they were just score. Was the referee perfect? No. Was he a lot more perfect than most of the players on that pitch? Yes. Basically, at the end of the day, so that annoyed me. We had a couple of other disallowed tries. CJ Stander got held up over the line, and then obviously at the death, a knock-on stopped Ireland. So Ireland had 2 disallowed tries to Australia's 1, which could have evened things up a little bit more, I guess. But so I don't think 18-9. I think this was probably closer to being a 3-point game than a 2-score game.
Absolutely. Look, just coming back to the no try for the Australians, it's just like technically correct decision, and I want to see more of those calls. It absolutely frustrates the hell out of me is that the amount of players that are getting tackled off the ball. It happened, as you've alluded to, I was listening to the Australian commentators and they're saying, "Oh, it's a dummy runner. What are you supposed to do? Not tackle him because he hasn't got the ball. You're only allowed to tackle the player with the ball." So, yes, that's a penalty. And it's actually happening a lot. There's a lot of players getting taken out, off the ball that could be in support of the ball carrier. And it really does need to get cracked down. And it's very similar to the kicks that are going in and the players that drift sideways across the field. And there's a lot of blocking. There's a lot of things that could be tidied up that could make the game, you don't have to keep changing the rules. You just have to apply the laws that are already there. So I was quite happy with that call. It just has to be done a lot more.
Yeah, no, agreed. I think that's what it comes down to then. Red Moon Surf just asking who won. You can have if you look in the picture, it should have the titles. It says Australia 18, Ireland 9. So Australia won. There you go. And it's the scores there. The scores there as well. Yes, exactly. Up there somewhere. Woo. So yes. So that's that was the score. We said defence is on top. All that kind of stuff. We've mentioned obviously those big shifts by all the by the Aussie forwards in the tackling. Beals played well. Folau had a decent game. Corey Betty did okay. Someone I thought was surprised who was selected because he's not really done anything for the Rebels all season. And then on the Ireland side, obviously CJ Stander and Ryan had big games. Colin Murray was busy, and that was pretty much it. I think really from my point of view.
Watching that game, I'm sort of initially sort of thinking, even if Ireland doesn't pull this one out of the fire, it's like they'll come back. They'll be better next week. By the time the final whistle's blown, I'm not convinced. I think actually Australia's probably the one that'll take confidence out of that. They'll go on the same game plan. They'll come on with the same bench, and you sort of go that Australia's probably got more to get that would have got gained out of this match than Ireland would have.
Yeah, out of this match, definitely Australia got more out of it. We've also got to remember that Australia only had a short camp together this week. They haven't been together for very long, so there's lots of upside from the Australian performance. On top of this, Ireland, on the other hand, well, they had a lot of second string guys starting. It's not an entirely second string team, but I mean, people like Joe Carberry, for example, ahead of Sexton, you wouldn't expect to would not normally start. So they can definitely have a stronger starting lineup, but you got to wonder how much they've had that time together as in the Six Nations relatively recently. They come from only four teams maximum in Ireland anyway. So these are guys at the end of the season fully functioning if tired. But there's not much. You got to say there's probably not much to upside. The flip side to that is the coaches. Let's be honest. Checker has one way of playing and one way of playing only. he's not going to suddenly change the style of his team overnight. Whereas Conor, I want to say Conor O'Shea. Have I got the right person? Not sure I have. Anyway, I've gone blank as to the Irish coach.
My mind's gone blank too.
Oh, dear me. Anyway, he's much more of a technical...
That's Jay.
Joel? No, not Joel. He's much more... Joe Smith. Joe Smith.
Yes, but there we go.
So he is a much more thinking coach, much more technical coach, and he will tweak his tactics. The tactics will change for Ireland going into the next game. So from a coaching point of view, you can see things will change, but for Ireland above Australia, but from a what can I see from watching this game? Where's the growth side? There's much more growth in Australia's game to come than there is in the Irish one.
If I was the Irish, I would seriously consider not kicking the ball up and under anyway at all. You're really playing with fire when you're sending up and unders. Well, for the Irish, the Gary Owen, with Folau there at the back. They got away with it, I felt, a bit tonight. He did take one fantastic take it towards the end of the game. I think they were a bit lucky that he didn't take a few more during the game.
Yeah, Ireland do have some very good players under the high ball as well. But, yeah, you've got to choose who and where, and you've got to be targeting Corbetti's wing in that situation.
But the thing with Folau is that he takes it differently from any other player in rugby. So you've got truckload of good players under the high ball. Obviously, I've forgotten the winger's name now. Mine's going. Is this late?
Stockdale.
Stockdale, yeah.
Yeah.
Stockdale. He's actually good under the ball, but he's a classical taker. You know, you've got, like, we've mentioned a few All Blacks, so Ben Smiths and the Izzy Dags type of, they're good under the high ball. But one thing that Israel Dag does differently is that he takes it AFL style with the hands above the head quite consistently, which means that he's got a better chance at winning that aerial contest.
True, he is very good. He has got a better chance. He is very good at what he does, and you say he does do it in a different way. But I can't see Ireland totally going away from what is one of their strengths against other teams.
True.
Right, it is late. Any kind of last comments?
I suppose the last comment is really that it was a bit of a disappointing game. With the expectation, the build-up during the week, we've talked about it on your other shows, is the fact is that I think most people were actually looking forward to Australia-Ireland game the most, and it was okay. It wasn't a bad game, but probably not the heights that we were really expecting.
It was a good game. It was a tight game, but the problem was that it was a defensive game rather than an attacking game. We saw much better defensive skills than we saw attacking skills. Australia didn't really get the ball that much, even though the stats will say it was fairly even. So the Barca pundit says in the chat, lol, does Ashwin know what AFL is? They play on a cricket pitch to start. I've gone. Where was I going with all this stuff? I've got no idea now. I was total shock what I was saying. It's just gone blank. Oh dear.
Hate it when that happens.
Yep. Oh yeah, it's a defensive game, and so yeah, it's more rugby purists kind of one to enjoy rather than kind of champagne attacking rugby. There were a couple of nice moves, but on the whole, the defence has got on top. So it was more of a rugby purist, but it was a nice tight game to watch. Whereas the All Blacks France game was a good game for an hour, and then became a bit of a farce really after that.
Don't you think though? It was a defensive game, but there was just wasn't that intensity in the tackle though either. It wasn't just that big hits type. Yeah, I don't know. I absolutely agree. It was a defensive game, but
we had some big hits in the first 10-15 minutes, definitely. I didn't think Conor Murray was going to survive the game. He got cut in two a couple of times.
Yep.
And it looks like you got a fan in the chat because Red Moon Surface says Ashwin has good hair. But there we go. So, so look, there's my hair.
Oh, come on, it's like midnight. Give me a break, man. It's midnight here. It's actually midnight.
It's midnight.
I've been up since 3.
It is our bedtime. The Red Moon Service, Paul, do you have a girlfriend? I'm not going there, mate. Not going there. All right. So, thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Arshin, for joining me. NZ Fatso on Twitter. I'm DrivingMaul on Twitter. It's been a blast. It is late. I will be up for Argentina versus Wales, so do join me for post-match reaction to that one as well. Thank you, guys.